This episode of the Model 3 Owners Club podcast is brought to you by Duliban Insurance. If you live in Ontario, Canada, and are looking for the best price and coverage on your Tesla, give Duliban a call at 1-855-385-4226 or visit our website at dulibaninsurance.com/Tesla. Well, it's time for the Model 3 Owners Club podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Page, and sorry about the delays, folks. We've been gone for a couple of weeks. 1 week was on vacation, just a lot of things going on and stuff, and wow, I got to learn not to take vacations because holy crap, so much stuff has happened. So, you know, and Elon, of course, dropped a big bomb on everybody this week. But that's the elephant in the room. We'll leave that a little bit later in the show. But before we get into this, I just want to talk about our guests that are here today. So joining us, as usual, is Eric Camacho. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm doing well, everybody. Welcome.
That's great. And we also have Michael Bodner. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Trev. Thanks for having me.
Good. And last but not least, Ian. How you doing, buddy?
I am well. Good evening, everybody.
That's good. Well, thanks for joining us. Let's just dive into this. We just got so much to talk about. So we're going to plow through some of these items and leave the big juicy stuff towards the end. So one of the first items that's available, of course, on the Model 3, since they've started, is the all-white interior is now available for anybody who wants to order the all-wheel drive Model 3. So it's not just limited to the Performance Model 3. So I'll give you a nice picture here. There's kind of a nice three-quarter shot of the back seats. I love it. It looks really good. Now, of course, I understand white is not for everyone. And I always tell people, of course, they always ask me about my white interior. And I'm always like, well, if you have kids, if you have dogs, and if you don't like cleaning your car, don't get the white seats. Otherwise, they're great. They're easy to keep clean. So those of you who want that, I think it's a $2,000 option for, to get that as a premium for the white interior. So glad to see that arriving. The next major hurdle, of course, with the Model 3 is getting that standard battery out and the standard interior. Of course, we don't know what the standard interior is going to look like, but I have a pretty good guess that it's going to be cloth. Not a lot of amenities that ways. So, yeah, glad to see that. The next item on the list here is there's been some changes to the supercharging program. So for those of you who have referral codes, which is basically everybody who owns a Tesla now, including the Model 3 people, I should mention the referral code that you can give out to people only gives freebies or the free supercharging, so to speak, for S, X, and the Performance Model 3. Now I'm sure Ian, Ian, you're very you're very happy about waking up that morning. That was a nice Christmas present for you, wasn't it?
That was friggin' awesome. I lost it when I saw that. A big shout out to Brad Garcia for breaking that on the forum. It's the first thing I read that morning, and as I responded, I'm pretty sure the neighbors heard me scream when I read that one out. It's like, wow, man, that's a huge present. And I mean, like, no word of a lie. I mean, our big plan with this car is to travel a lot with it. And I'm thinking, I calculate if I hang on to it 10 years, which I'm going to have to now, free supercharging, I could save about $6,000 in what we plan to do with that car over the span of 10 years, just in traveling. So that's a huge one. Yeah,
like for us on the vacation, we use the superchargers basically exclusively. I even brought my CHAdeMO adapter. I brought my 30-foot NEMO 1450 extension cable. Never used it. I used the level 1 twice at my uncle's place, my cousin's place. Otherwise, it was superchargers. The nice thing about the superchargers at the end of the day is that it's frictionless, right? You just plug it in, you kind of forget about it. Even if you have to pay, it's still frictionless. It's just one less thing. So really nice bonus for people to get the Performance Model 3. It's a really great little bonus on Tesla's part. It just shows, you know, they got some margins in there that they can kind of throw around a little bit. So that's quite nice. I'm hoping, I haven't 100% confirmed, but I think the Model 3 people will be able to participate in referral awards, although they may end up phasing that out. Right now, everything's still in play. You guys, have you clicked on the loot box at all? You have that in your app on your phone?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And Trev, actually, even people who have not taken delivery yet of their Model 3s have referral codes that they can give out.
Well, you have to have a confirmed order, though.
Confirmed order, right, but they don't even have delivery yet, and they've got the loot box.
Yeah.
That's the case with me. I definitely have my referral code, so I should actually start tweeting that out. Who knows? Maybe I'll get a referral. That's an idea, isn't it?
Ian needs his roadster.
Yes.
All right. Let's see here. Yeah, go ahead.
Trev, sorry, just before we go ahead, I want to just clarify what they've done in terms of the dates. So the program as it stands now, they've told us the deadline is September 15th. So anybody who puts an order in on an S, an X, or a Performance 3 with a referral code until September 15th will get lifetime supercharging.
So the end of the third quarter.
Correct. After September 16th, sorry,
correct.
You only get 1 year. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Thanks for that, bringing that up. So it's very important to remember that the free unlimited supercharging is going away. I think it's pretty apparent here that Tesla really wants to move away from any form of free supercharging, no matter what. They've been, I mean, if you look at the progression of supercharging, they've been threatening to take it away for some time. They kept extending it, but you could see here that they've been chopping off like grandfathering and then the free now. So eventually I think what's going to end up happening is that on the really super high-end cars, what's going to happen is you'll get 1 year free supercharging. After that, you fall into the you fall into the 400 kilowatt hour free yearly allotment, and then anything over and above that you have to pay, except for non-performance Model 3s. They're just paid no matter which way you look at it. So
also of interest too is that if we think back to one of our prior shows with the premium internet option, that you're going to get that for the first year for free in your car, and now free supercharging will be offered for the first year after September 16th. So there are some unique parallels there when it comes to those two options.
Yeah.
And I would add one more thing. I just know of a local supercharger here down in South Florida. It's a popular spot at lunchtime, and you see it loaded with S's and X's, and it's the same people every day. They're not traveling over a distance. They're just getting free electricity. And that's not the intent of the superchargers. So for me, giving it for a year, those who get grandfathered in, of course, that's great. But I think this is only a good thing. The more Teslas on the road, the more you want to have access to the superchargers when you need them, not just because you're avoiding your electric bill at home.
Charge at home, folks. That's where it matters at the end of the day. Besides, it's the cheapest method anyways if you have to pay at the end of the day. All right, moving along. Let's see here. Some changes to the autopilot program, of course. Enhanced autopilot trials have started, so they're starting to roll out now. So for those of you who haven't purchased enhanced autopilot, you'll be able to do a 14-day trial. After that, you'll have to pay, or you just opt out of the program. I'll put a link in the video description to Tesla's FAQ on that on their website. Basically, it boils down, if you have a hardware 1 car, so that's S's and X's that were made prior to, I think it was September of 2016. My date might be off a little bit. So any car that has the Autopilot 1 equipment, that's a $5,000 upgrade. And of course, if you have the Autopilot 2 equipment, that's a $6,000 upgrade. These are U.S. prices, of course. So no breaks on the price. You have to pay. But at least you can get a free trial to test it out. So if you haven't bought it, you can always do that after the fact. I mean, you could always do it after the fact. Now, Tesla had done, I think, a program like this for a short while in 2016, where you had a 30-day trial. And then it kind of petered out very quietly and stuff. So now they're actually bringing it back. And I think it makes sense for a lot of people that really want to get into this. Of course, this is for enhanced autopilot. It's not full self-driving. Full self-driving does not exist yet. So there's no reason to be offering that. Speaking of which, they also confirmed that the people that, of course, Elon's been talking, of course, in the second quarter financial call, which we'll talk about a little bit later here. But he did touch on the on Autopilot version 3, which will be coming next year, which is a completely new computer system. We'll talk about that. And I always speculated that the people that would get the free upgrade would be people who actually paid for full self-driving. And that's exactly what's happened. That was actually clarified today or yesterday. Yeah, I think it was today. So yeah, for anybody who's looking for a free upgrade who currently has a car, an SX or a 3 with the hardware 2, the only way you can get the free computer upgrade is if you've already paid for full self-driving. So not too many people have actually done that. I know one person has a Model X who paid for the full self-driving. But yeah.
Trev, I did see a note for the trial. I believe you need version 2018.28.1 or newer to get that 14-day trial.
Well, that stands to reason that, yeah, you'd have to have the firmware update because they have to build the capability to be able to activate it and all the other stuff. So, yeah, make sure that you that you've updated your software. Well, you can't update your software. You just got to wait for it, right? That's kind of how things happen.
But if you don't have that yet, don't worry. The trial's coming, I'm sure.
Okay, good. Good to know. Any other comments on that before we move on? Looking forward to it. Who doesn't have autopilot? Eric, do you have it?
I do. I know Ian does not.
Ian doesn't have anything yet.
No, Ian's driving a Corolla at the moment that doesn't even have. Well, actually, it does have cruise control, but that's about it.
No, I've had it, and I think it's one of the greatest creations that Tesla's put out there, aside from the vehicles themselves. It's been touted on this show and on the forums many a times just how great the technology is and what the developers have been able to do with the AI for autopilot, and then with every update, it just gets better and better, smoother. It's just becoming more natural. And for me, I drive 60 miles round trip each day to work and back, and I can't go a day without using it. It's a great product, and it's still in beta, and it's still great.
Yeah, I love to use it. The only problem, of course, is the nag now down to 15 or 20 seconds. That was a bit much. I really would rather see that back to like a minute. But other than that, it's great. All right, so let's move on. The next one here, Model 3. It's already getting better. Official 0 to 60 numbers. Ian, want to get in on this?
Yeah, I'm going to go supervillain monologuing here for a bit. Apologies to everyone else here.
Okay.
But there's so much to talk about in Performance Model 3 news just because there's been so many cars hitting the road and so many videos coming out and people relating their experiences. So, yeah, we just wasn't long ago in one of the last episodes, we were conjecturing, like, is the Model 3 Performance going to be exactly dialed in at the number, 0 to 63.5? Is there any headroom like there has been traditionally on some of the other cars? I thought no, because they're using the standard motor and just giving it a better inverter and kind of overclocking it. Turns out I was wrong, and I'm so happy I was, because people are already hitting 0 to 60 in 3.3. There's a number of videos that have that. Even Road and Track from their road test at Lime Rock track got that number, and we even saw one instance of somebody getting a 3.18. Now that was an outlier, and that was a one direction run with a very slight elevation drop, so I'm going to say that's a little bit on the fringe right now. But yeah, cars are consistently getting a 3.3, and quarter miles like 11.7, 11.8. There was one release today of a guy going head to head with a McLaren 570 at 1 mile of altitude. And I mean, the McLaren 570 is a 10-second car, and he was within 0.2 seconds. I mean, the McLaren turned in 11.5 and the Performance Model 3 in 11.7. And these are all on the stock tires, which are not fabulous for traction. The other thing I should note is there was a lot of people saying, well, what's the difference in acceleration if you have the base car with the 18s versus the 20-inch? And it wouldn't seem to make a big difference. And I'm thinking this is because you might have slightly better traction on those 20-inch Michelins, but the 18-inch base wheels are about 6 pounds lighter a corner, and that's going to have a significant effect on acceleration. So, do you think but some really sticky rubber, we'll get down close to 3, I think, with sticky rubber. I'm calling some solid 3.1s, 3.2s.
Do you think the car would actually benefit from having, say, some kind of like a staggered setup as well, Ian?
That's, yeah, we talk about that a lot on the forum. I get drilled with questions. Well, what about stagger? What about it's hard to say, because going wider with standard production street tires doesn't necessarily benefit you a lot. What you want to get maximum acceleration, you want a tire that's got a really soft sidewall and is not particularly low profile. Look at a dragster. That gives you pretty much a good idea of what the optimum traction tire is, which is horrible at anything else. You wouldn't even want to go to the grocery store.
Well, everything's about compromise, right? So
that's it, exactly. So you want a tire that's got a lot of flexibility so that it can launch hard and grip the road. Believe me, I will run every test known to mankind. I have a huge amount of stock available, and we're going to be doing all sorts of filming with it. We're going to have all kinds of fun. So I'm going to try square. I'm going to try stagger, wider, narrower, different compounds. We'll have this figured out. But encouraging to see that the car is already bettering its numbers, and it's got potential, I think, to do better.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what you can come up with on that.
Hey, Ian, can I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
So do you think, we already know the performance numbers that have come out. We know what the dual motor is now doing. Do you think that the Performance Model 3 can break 3 seconds?
Well, again, that's another one that was on the forum, and I was even joking, is like, okay, I'm starting an extreme diet, like some real heavy cleansing over the next 2 months to see how much weight I can drop. I might be pulling
out the other seats out.
Yeah, well, that's it. But to me, that's cheating. I mean, you start stripping out the interior. I've seen guys do that with P100Ds and get crazy numbers. I'm not going to start dismantling my brand new $91,000 car. Yeah, it'll be cool to see how much it takes to get it there. I mean, but you got to realize when you're talking cars that are in the mid to low threes, every 0.1 of a second is a pretty significant improvement.
Well, Tesla, don't forget, Tesla also has a history of doing software updates on their cars to improve the performance. I mean, last year we got the uncorking, right, including my car. And then the year before that, I mean, they've been tweaking the firmware in the car to be able to get a little bit more performance. Now, I'm not to say that they'll maybe do exactly the same thing on the Model 3 because we just don't know how much tuning they can do on that permanent magnet reluctance motor because it is super efficient. So if they're going to do any tweaking, it might be, say, on the torque sleep on the front motor, which is AC induction or something. So, yeah, who knows, right?
Well, this is it. And I come back to what I said earlier. Like, I think they're going to want to hang on, I don't know how much, 4 or 6 months, maybe a year, to collect reliability data, because these are all still relatively new motors. And I mean, the level of performance they're getting out of these same motors now for the P3D application is pretty extreme. So I think they're going to want to log a ton of data, digest it all, see what the failure rate is, and then see how much more they can uncork. That's my best guess.
Yeah, I agree with 100%. Okay, so moving along, another one. Have you guys been watching this fella's YouTube? He goes by Engineerix on YouTube. He seems to have, well, he had a Model 3, and I don't know if he bought another one that was crashed or whatever. He's been tearing this thing apart and showing everybody the electronics and how it's built. So he's already confirmed at this point, this is one of our talking points here, that the dual motor Model 3 and the base P3D have the same springs on the car.
Correct.
And the other thing too, and I'll try to remember to put a link in the video description you can watch, and he specifically talks about the electronics in the car. He basically had pulled all the wiring out of the car, all the electronics, the dash, both motors, and he kind of laid it out on the garage floor, plugged it all back in, and just get a quick video tour of all the different components that make up the car. And the one thing that struck me with the Model 3 is just how much simpler the wiring harness is compared to other cars. He actually made a point of that. He said, I think he mentioned it was a Toyota Prius or something that he had experience with. It had a lot more, the Prius I'm talking about here, had a lot more modules and different and more wiring. So it just goes to show that some of the efficiencies in the Model 3. The other thing too, I want to make a point of this, that he talked about, that the Model 3 has 2 vehicle control modules, or VCMs, one on each kick plate, driver and passenger side. And the Model 3, I don't know if you know this or not, does not have traditional fuses. He's taken one of these apart. It's all MOSFETs in there, which means that you can't just tap your dash cam into a power outlet and hope that everything works. It just doesn't work like that. So he did show in the video it was a subsequent video, I'm sorry, where there was a special spot, like an in-use pin or like that, on one of the white connectors on the VCM, where you could tap power. Now, you would still have to apply like an inline fuse to power something like a dash cam or whatever. But it shows that there are some promising areas that we can get some power. This is proven to be a little bit of a difficult car for people that want to add accessories to it, because right now we've been relegated to pulling stuff out of the 12-volt socket. So it's interesting. So for those of you that are very technical, I'm going to keep following this guy. I would recommend you subscribe to his YouTube channel. He's on a roll here. He's going to be taking some other stuff apart. He's going to be like our public Sandy Monroe, I think, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally. No, he's got some good numbers, and I was really appreciative of him going back and getting the exact number sets on the springs. If you go on the forum and if you look at...
He is on the forum, by the way, too.
Yeah, he's on M3OC for sure, and we've got a thread going now that dual motor and performance Model 3 are arriving. I forget what the thread is, but if you look that up, you'll see that he gives a complete list of all of the spring numbers. So he's got the early spring numbers. He figured out that yes, there's a different code on the cars up to VIN 2000 and something. After that, it changes again, and then dual motor and base performance Model 3 have yet a third set of spring numbers. So far there's 3 different sets of springs, and then we don't have the number, but we know for sure that the performance upgrade package on performance Model 3 has yet another set of springs, because those are lower. So there's actually 4 different versions floating around. Yeah,
I went to see Sasha a few weeks ago, and I was blown away by how complex and very cleverly laid out the suspension is on the Model 3. There's a lot of different linkages and stuff. It just shows that there's definitely some room for improvement for people that want to do some performance stuff. Oh, by the way, this fella, the Engineerix guy, also has another video where he looks at a brand new performance Model 3, shows you all of the changes underneath from the tunnel. Yeah, and
I watched it like 6 times.
Yeah, I bet you did. And yeah, the half shafts go through the front linkage, whereas before it kind of goes around and stuff. So yeah, there's some interesting changes in there. I think in a lot of ways it just shows that Tesla was thinking in advance for all of these things. It'll be interesting to see once we get some right-hand drive cars, because it looks to me, and I've seen the firewall on a few occasions on some of the earlier videos, and it looks like it's all symmetric. So they were thinking well in advance, not to have to re-engineer this car for right-hand drive. So
agreed.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to jump back and expand a little bit further, Trev, on P3D, on that road and track test. If you have any interest at all in the Performance Model 3 and what it does, and particularly the track mode, which all of us Performance Model 3 people are drooling over, that road and track test is gold. It's fantastic. It was extensive. It's beautifully written. And what's cool about it was not only did they spend an entire day with 2 examples of the car there at Lime Rock, flogging it to see what it could do, but they also had 2 of the key people from the car's development from Tesla on staff. They had Lars Moravi, who's director of chassis engineering, and Michael Neumeier, who's manager of chassis control. And they were there the whole day to basically fill them in on how they adapted the car for track use and how they developed track mode. And the beginning of the story is hilarious because the author starts off, it all began with a tweet. And of course, this was the famous tweet where, you know, will the car have track mode? And it was like, yeah. As a matter of fact, it will. It'll outrun a BMW M3 or whatever. And apparently these guys scrambled for the hill. Now, what we've discovered is in the background, they've been working on this for years. And it's something that was one of my only pet peeves that I hated about the cars. You could not disable the stability control. Right. There was no way to turn any of that stuff off on any previous Tesla. And this was the green light for them to go ahead and do it. So I was super excited to hear that, particularly because I want to take mine rallying in the winter, and having the, you know, stability control constantly nagging would drive me insane. So yeah, R&T spent the day there. They had these 2 engineers on staff who had brainstormed the whole thing. And the description of how it works is beautiful. And what's cool is you have a car on the track with completely separate front and rear drivetrains that you can reprogram the regen individually. So you can have basically more braking at the front, more braking at the rear. You can dial in the amount of stability control you want, all individually. And they've tuned this so perfectly. And the way it was described was it drives a lot like a front wheel drive hot hatch, except it has the power and acceleration of an all-wheel drive car. So when you're entering the corner, you back off the throttle, for lack of a better word.
Accelerator.
The front motor, yeah, the accelerator. The front wheels will start to regen hard. It can generate up to 0.3 Gs just in regen. That's a pretty significant amount. I mean, you're talking about a third of the maximum braking the car can achieve just on regen alone. That causes the front end to dig in, lightens up the rear end. The car starts to pivot, and the stability control will now let the back end pivot around. So you can walk this thing into the corner hard on the nose and then power out of there. I mean, I was just drooling reading this.
The beauty of dual motor and having individual software electronic control over the torque.
Yeah, this car literally will do things that no conventional car with all-wheel drive
just not possible.
Will do. No, you can't. You're reaching a new plane of existence here, and apparently it's so easy to drive quick. So yeah, hats off to them. This was a really, really good in-depth article. Anybody who hasn't read it, go to Road and Track. It's still, I think, their feature article on their website.
I'm definitely going to do that. I'm running a little bit behind on some of the stuff, but because of vacation, but definitely going to check that out. I think it also really points in a direction. You know, last in October when Tesla, you know, announced the semi-truck, and they said, look, we've made this thing that's impossible to jackknife because we can do all this torque moving around on the motors. It just goes to show maybe these guys are working on that project now. It's amazing what can be done just with individual motors. And I think it's also part why Tesla's putting 3 motors in the Roadster, right? That thing is going to be mental what they're going to be able to do with that thing.
Yeah, because with twin motors in the rear axle, now you can do torque vectoring. You can have each individual motor apply exactly the amount of power you want on the inside and the outside, you know, as you enter the corner. Kind of like what's being done now with these intelligent differentials, but you can do it so much more precisely. Like that car, the handling is going to be mental.
Please use my referral code so we can get one. We can go for a ride.
Yes.
Michael, please share your thoughts. You're being quiet on the subject.
I'm just thinking that my rear-wheel drive Model 3 is amazing, and listening to Ian talk about this performance car, I want to take a test drive so badly, and at the same time I don't, because I feel like that could be a $30,000 test drive.
He's going to want to trade it in.
Yeah. It almost doesn't even sound real. It sounds like a video game.
But I think the crux of all this really is the power of electric cars.
Yeah.
You know, we can certainly see that just having one rear motor. I mean, Michael, you and I pretty much drive the exact same car. It really responds the minute you want the car to respond. I can't even fathom taking that and like exponentially raising it to a whole new level for the performance car, the dual more. I can't understand what that's like. So to even think about the folks like Ben Sullins who are fortunate to be able to get a Roadster, like how do you manage that in your life? Like, it's like, I know, but it's still like incredible to have the car. Like, come on, man. But yeah, but that's why electric cars are so great, because there's so much performance in a very, very small little package that you wouldn't otherwise have in an ICE.
I take people out, coworkers out for lunch, and we get on the highway, and just, your basic merging onto the highway, getting up to highway speed, and they freak out. And I said, that's like 10% throttle. I don't even do anything. And they're like giddy in the passenger seat. And this is nothing compared to performance or Roadster. Forget about it.
It's the same.
Insane.
It's kind of the same shtick I do with the Model X. I mean, it's the biggest, but it's also the slowest car they make. Mm-hmm. So you blow them away and you say, by the way, this is the slowest car they make. Even the Model 3 is faster than this thing. At half the price. So, all right. Well, that's good. It's very encouraging to see what's going on. All right, let's move on here. White. Well, Model 3. Best-selling premium-size sedan in the U.S. According to July's numbers, 52% market share. Holy mackerel. Well, is it surprising? I mean, pent-up demand, competition that have nothing to offer that's even remotely close to the Model 3 in terms of performance and handling. Any thoughts on this, guys? I'm just getting into this thing. I mean, geez, it's crazy.
Well, I think it's, and we want to be specific here. Tesla was counting in that reporting the BMW 3 Series, the Audi A4, the Mercedes C-Class, the Lexus IS, and the Jaguar XE as comparisons. So even with that in mind, we know that there's a lot of folks who are still waiting on the standard Model 3. We know some folks are still waiting to get their deliveries. But to have that much growth in a short time frame, when so many people out there are like, they're never going to do it. They're not going to hit 3,000, not going to get 5,000 per week. They're not going to hit and so far they've proven them all wrong. And now here we are basically midway through 2018, and we're outselling the other cars combined, which is a testament to the fortitude of trying to get this out there.
Well, the other thing that I get on Twitter, of course, when you repeat some of this stuff is you get the people, the naysayers or the non-believers or whatever you want to call them, and they're all, well, what happens when they fill all those orders in the U.S.? I want to see how long they can sustain it for. Folks, we haven't even seen the base Model 3 yet, mm-hmm. And I think there's a large majority of people that are waiting for that car. I mean, us too. They haven't even started in Europe. They haven't started in Asia Pacific yet. This thing is just mental. It's just taking over.
Yeah, Trev, I think the naysayer comment on that one is it's fair. It's a fair statement.
I would
filling
agree.
Orders that were from 2 years ago, but at the same time, those people waited 2 years to get this car. They're not banging down the door to get the competition's car anymore. So it's an impressive number. These are people who are not buying that 3 Series at A4, the Mercedes C. They're hanging in, waiting for this car. Before we went live, I shared a story of a coworker whose lease ended, and he wants a standard battery or standard range Model 3. He's taking the train to work. He does not want to get a competitive car. He'd rather wait a couple months, inconvenience himself a little bit, and wait for the right car. So I think that's just a testament to you just said it. Standard range comes, this thing is going to get even crazier.
Oh yeah, it's just going to blow up. It's just going to be crazy.
Oh, for sure.
The other thing that we're talking about here is of course, Tesla is taking trades on these cars. There's some interesting articles here. The top 5 non-Tesla cars being traded in for the Model 3. Who wants to take point on this one? This is really interesting.
Oh, this is fantastic. So so when you think of Tesla years ago, you would think about the cars that are coming in. It's not the Honda Accords, it's not the the Subarus, it's really high-end vehicles. We've had people trying to trade in McLarens, like really awesome cars. Nowadays we're trading in BMW 3 Series, Honda Accord, Honda Civic, Nissan Leaf, and Toyota Prius.
Wow.
Like those are the top 5 cars being traded into Tesla now. with the Model 3. Now, granted, those are non-Tesla cars. There are obviously some Teslas that people are trading in after leases are up or things like that. But again, that's when you think of luxury brand cars that people are getting into. We know right now Tesla's producing a $50,000 car and plus. And these folks are basically getting out of a $20,000 car to now get into a $50,000 car, which is crazy, which is just incredible. But yeah, we're a BMW 3 Series. I mean, Toyota Prius, Nissan Leaf. These are basically not premium cars, and that's what they're being traded in for.
Well, part of that I think too is you got some people that have been driving electric cars for some time now, want to go full battery, but didn't really have any other products to buy that were long range, and of course the Model 3 certainly satisfies that desire. Again, I hate to harp on this again, but we still haven't seen the standard range car yet. We're seeing a lot of people that are upgrading, spending more than they normally would. Maybe they're factoring in, and I think they should, the cost of fuel savings, especially outside of the U.S. because, let's face it, gas is relatively cheap in the U.S. compared to everywhere else. I mean, I was just in Montreal, and if you do the conversion, cost of fuel in Montreal, $5.48 a gallon.
I have to leave now.
Welcome to our world.
Exactly. So
yeah, Trev, I mentioned it before. With the mileage that I drive, which is about 20,000 a year, I just hit 10,000 in 6 months. I'll save about $12,000 over 6 years. I got the full credit. That's $19,500. I traded in a Hyundai Sonata. That was a $33,000 car. Add 19 grand to it, 52. I spent a little bit more, and I got a whole lot more
of
car,
course, yeah.
Basically.
And I think that's part of the thing. I think you got some people that are actually sitting down and actually properly doing the math now. And I've said this many times before. Most people, when they buy a car, they go into the dealer and they say, how much is this thing going to cost me to drive it off the lot today? They don't think about gas. They don't think about maintenance. Those are just kind of side things that we just kind of know, and they're in perpetuity. But with a Tesla or a full battery electric car, you got to capture that math and actually put it into your equation. And eventually, once we get to cost parity, which is basically a battery and a drivetrain in an electric car costing the same as what would be in an ICE car, that it's game over. You would never buy a gas car at the end of the day. If you did, I mean, if you're prepared to adjust, and it doesn't take that much adjustment, we know this already. Just the economics just don't make sense.
And that, I think it's also going to be very important as we move forward here in the U.S. as the federal tax credit begins to phase out with Tesla, specifically after December of this year. So, come 2020, there's no tax incentive. The market will be drastically different by then with the number of cars that we expect to see on the road from all manufacturers, including Tesla. At that point, will it be at the point where, as you said, even if cost parity has not been achieved come 2020, or at least EVs such a dominant force in the market that ICE cars, the sales of those cars are depleted so much so that without incentives, people still do the math in their head going, yeah, but you know what? If I stop paying for gas, I'm spending $50 a week. That's going to be, X amount per year. Like, yeah, maybe it's just worth getting into an electric car, even if it's going to cost me, say, $5,000 more than a gas car. But I'm going to easily save that much in gas alone already in the course of a few years. So, I think we're slowly getting there, and Tesla is certainly pushing that envelope a lot quicker than others. But I think we'll get there soon enough. Yeah,
that's looking really promising. I mean, I was just watching a video. Not to just talk about Tesla at this point, but Bjorn Nyland just did a test on the new, I think it's the Hyundai Kona. The little SUV, and driving 90 kilometers an hour, he just did a range test, and he's getting close to 500 kilometers out of it. That's 300 miles. So that's a pretty significant, vehicle. I think they're going to do quite well in Norway. But yeah, I think your point is, I think there's a certain amount of profit taking, if you will, on the count of people wanting the federal tax credit in the U.S., and that's kind of juicing up the numbers too, at least for now. So. But it's good for everybody, you just got to get into it. All right, spend enough time on this. Let's move on. A couple other things. That just came out. Electric got an exclusive on this one. The Model S and the Model X are going to see an interior refresh coming in the third quarter, so basically a year from now, next year. And I'm going to say it. I nailed it because the interior is exactly like the Model 3. It doesn't take much of a rocket scientist to see the direction that Tesla was taking. I had said this a few times before that if I back up a little bit and you kind of look at the way Tesla operates, when they introduced the Model X, which was about 6 months before they introduced the Model 3, they went to this flat nose situation, right? The new mustache. And right then, when I looked at that car, I thought, because at the time they were starting to talk about the Model 3. We hadn't seen it yet, but they were starting to talk about the Model 3. And I thought to myself, if the Model 3 looks like that, the front end, we know what a Model S refresh is going to look like. And sure enough, like a month later after the Model 3 was announced, that's exactly what happened. So right then and there, I went, yeah, Tesla is a creature of habit. And when we saw the Model 3 interior, I said, what's the next car they're going to announce? Well, let's see what they do. And sure enough, I said, when they started talking about the semi-truck, I said, if the semi-truck has that interior, we know what the interior refresh is going to look on an S and X. And that's exactly what's happened at this point. So some changes. First of all, they're not doing a single screen. They are still going to a horizontal format. We don't know the size of the screen at this point. To me, it still looks like it's 17-inch. Unfortunately, I don't have pictures. I would put it up here for you. But you can go to Electric and look at them. The dash still has that nice vent situation. So Tesla's all in on this new vent system. Of course, it's on the semi-truck as well, and it's coming to the S and the X. They are apparently, I should mention too that these images that you might pull up on the internet, they're concepts, but they're pretty close to what Tesla's going to deliver, because Tesla, as you know, doesn't really do concepts. What they deliver is pretty much what they deliver. Yeah, so the S and the X are going to retain the binnacle, although it's hidden. It's really buried deep inside the dash. But at this point, it looked like the graphics were a little bit different, so I don't know how much information they're going to shift around on the cars and stuff. But to me, just the interior just looks a little more futuristic, which is kind of what the Model 3 kind of looks like. It's simpler. Apparently, the other thing that they're going to be doing is really upping the ante on the finish, on the quality of the finish on the inside to really step up their game. I think anybody who's seen a Model S or a Model X who's in that territory of pricing and comparing it to other cars, they say, well, the main quibble that they have is the interior doesn't feel premium enough compared to other cars in that price range. And, you know, for a certain degree, that's a valid point. So it looks like Tesla's going to finally rectify that situation. The other thing in the article that they were able to obtain was that there is going to be an exterior refresh. Now, how much of an exterior refresh, I don't know, but that's not coming till about 2020 or 2021. So it looks like Model S is doing just fine in the looks department. There's no need to really rattle the cage on that one. I'm glad to see that. And I think that in this case, you know, leaking this information is not something that Tesla really likes. But I think for a large portion of the public, and I'll mention somebody here in a second, it really assures them that, look, if I'm buying something today, it's not going to change in 3 months, right? I'm safe for at least a year. And if you look at Kim from the Like Tesla channel, that was one of the reasons they finally pulled the trigger on the Model X that they had won as part of the referral program. When they finally found out that news, they finally pulled the trigger on the car. They said, oh, at least we know the interior is not going to change for a year. So have you guys seen these pictures?
Yes.
Any thoughts?
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think it, you know, and this is something that the article sort of positions, which is it is geared towards autonomy. You know, it is going to be a very futuristic look. I think the binnacle that they have is quite small. Again, and for those who have seen it before, and if you're listening to the podcast, find the article if you can online, because you'll see the photographs, and it shows you what it would look like on the dashboard. Again, these are all
I'll pull up the pictures. You keep talking,
sketches,
I'll go find them.
Yeah, you'll see the photographs where they took the in the rendering, the computer and the steering wheel are taken away, so you can kind of see how small it is. But it's at least, you know, there are some folks who don't like the interior of the 3. And to your point, Trev, we knew that after the Semi was coming out, we were like, hey, look at that. There's some Model 3 components in the Semi design. So it stood to reason that we would see that in the S and X refreshes. I think it looks great. I think it's going to be nice. I think having the Model S and X have different seats and different materials will certainly help to differentiate the two cars from the 3. But I mean, I think it's great. I think it's really what we're doing is going to be smart to do that. And I think it's also going to help with having fewer parts, sort of streamlining everything. So the cars have very similar things. So when it comes to selling it, well, they all have the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a good idea.
Okay, I just found the image here. Let's see if I can just drop it out. It's not working for me. Oh, I hate when that happens.
And I would add, it's consistent with what the other auto manufacturers do. I mean, if you look at a BMW 3 Series, 5 Series, 7 Series, they all at some point in time look very similar, and then one gets a facelift somewhere, a little change, it looks different, and then the other two catch up. So I think we'll consistently see that over time, but it just makes sense once you get something that works and you're going to repeat it and you're going to put it in the other cars, and then one of them is going to get something else cool and the others are going to catch up to that.
Yeah. So I finally found the picture. I put it up for those of you who are watching the video on YouTube. You'll get a pretty good idea here, but it's on Electric's website. I'll link to it and you guys can take a look at it on your own when you want. Wow. So yeah, it's going to be quite interesting. Oh, speaking of which, there was it's not on our talking notes here, but it just kind of plugged my brain here for a second that it looks like Tesla has a new key fob that was submitted to the FCC for testing purposes. There is an embargo on them releasing any information for a couple more weeks or whatever. So we should see. I think, personally, my personal opinion here, that it may be destined for the Model 3. For those of you who don't know, summon in the US on an S and X can be done on the key fob. Yes, Eric, thank you very much. But in Canada, we cannot do it on the key fob. We must do it through the phone app, just like you have to do the phone app on the Model 3. And the Model 3 in Canada doesn't have summon no matter what you do. We have laws for vehicle interlocks and anti-theft and all this other stuff. And there's been some discussion, of course, as to why that is. It could be tied to a key fob. So I believe that this may be an option for people that want. And it's a Bluetooth key fob, by the way. So it's very similar to what you find on your phone. Of course, without Bluetooth enabled, you can't unlock the doors on the Model 3. So I think it'll satisfy, if it is indeed for the Model 3, I think it'll satisfy the people that are having trouble maybe with their phone. And it could also satisfy the lack of summon in Canada if it's tied to needing a physical key fob. So we'll see what transpires with that. But I have a feeling it's probably what it's for. All right. Let's move on here. What else we got to talk about? Oh, a big one. Tesla is going to be adding some Atari games. They've licensed some Atari games, and they're going to put it in as an Easter egg in firmware 9, which is due in about 4 weeks for the early access program. Wide distribution, they're expecting to be sometime in September, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm going to have to find some time to go and supercharge, I guess, and play some games on my car. So I think he said 4 games. Tempest, Pole position, and you'll be able to use the steering wheel.
Yes.
That's killer.
The question is it really the steering wheel or the buttons on the steering wheel? I hope it's really the steering wheel.
My understanding is it's actually the steering wheel.
Right.
So they'll
Can
be able
you
to
imagine
decouple.
all these cars now parked at the superchargers, and you're just going to see the front wheels back and forth, back and forth.
No, they'll be able to disengage it. Right?
Are you sure about that? I don't think there's a clutch on the steering column.
That's what I wonder.
We'll see. But that'd be kind of fun. And there was, what was the other one? There was another one.
Missile Command.
Oh yeah, Missile Command. Oh, wasted so many.
So let me. For those of you who are watching me on video, I don't look it, but I'm actually almost 41 years old. So I grew up with an Atari 5200 in my household. So almost all of these games we're talking about, I grew up playing. So to now be able to sit in my car like an idiot and playing these games when people are like, why is this guy in this car moving like that? There's been certain Easter eggs that the S and X have had for a while that the Model 3 doesn't yet have. Mm-hmm. Again, there's only a couple of them, but it's great now. There's going to be Atari games in this car, only furthering the love I have for my vehicle. But again, harking back to my heyday of my childhood, growing up playing Atari games. Please bring it. And again, this is just the beginning. There's more games to come. Even Elon tweeted out, like, if you're a game developer, you want to come work for Tesla, come.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to hire more people because we want to do this for all of this stuff moving forward. So I think it's going to be great. great. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Bring on Pac-Man. Bring it all on. Come on.
Totally awesome. I can't wait.
I keep tweeting Elon to get into the early access program. I need to find my way into this program.
Well, then you wouldn't be able to be on the show anymore. Because you're not posted. The first rule of the early access program is you don't talk about the early access program.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I'll keep my stock private. Come on.
Please, now I was going to have a whole like Fight Club video now, because you already did Brad Pitt in Seven. Now I was going to do Brad Pitt in Fight Club, who, by the way, technically, spoiler alert, wasn't actually real.
What was his name? Tyler Durden?
Tyler Durden. Yeah.
It might be my next video, so hang on.
Don't be spoiling nothing.
Shout out to everybody out there. You gotta watch. Go to Tesla Tunity on YouTube and watch the Seven tribute video. It's
what's in
it's
the box?
Oscar material. It's Oscar material.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good job,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Lots of fun. And congratulations to the Jetta wireless pad winner.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so that's basically most of the Model 3 stuff. Now we want to get into a little bit of we're getting into some different territory now. I just want to cover the financial results from Q2 because I listened to the webcast when I was on vacation. Of course, we couldn't talk about it. Probably not going to talk too much about it, but we're just going to go over some of the salient points on this. So let's bring up here. I got Tesla's update letter here. So I'm just going to read off a couple paragraphs here so you can get an idea of what's really going on. So Tesla's produced a vehicle output of 7,000 vehicles per week, or 350,000 per year. That's 5,000 Model 3s and 2,000 S and X combined. That should enable Tesla to become sustainably profitable for the first time in our history, and we expect to grow our production rate further in Q3. Of course, they're aiming for 6,000 cars, Model 3, I should say, by the end of this month, which is August. In July 2018, Model 3 not only had the #1 market share position in the segment of the U.S., it outsold all other mid-size premium sedans combined, accounting for 52% of the segment overall, and we already talked about that. And a little bit later down in here, they say, in July 2018, we delivered our 200,000th vehicle in the U.S., which means that our U.S. customers will have access to the full $7,500 federal tax credit until the end of 2018 this year, at which point it will start a phase out over the course of 2019. We produced 53,000. Oh, by the way, I should mention, it was pretty obvious what Tesla was doing as far as holding back Model 3 deliveries and slowing down the S and X deliveries, shifting some of them to Canada. Yeah, don't have to be rocket scientists to figure out what was going on there, right? But that's good because they did everybody solid, right? So that makes sure that the timing is right so that you get the full tax credit for the rest of the year and a gradual phase out in 2019. And for some of us in Canada, we are able to get cars a little bit earlier than we probably normally would have. Okay,
Merry
moving
Christmas.
on. Tesla says we produced 53,339 vehicles in Q2 and delivered 22,319 S and X combined, and 18,449 vehicles, Model 3s, I should say, totaling 40,768 deliveries. That's incredible growth. This has got to be freaking out the shorters like crazy. Not only the stock price that's been going up here, but yeah. Okay, so under, and the last little bit here is under the outlook. Tesla says that we expect to produce 50,000 to 55,000 Model 3 vehicles in Q3 alone, which will represent an increase of 75% to 92% from the prior quarter. Delivery should outpace production in Q3 as our delivery system stabilizes. That's a big deal too. Model 3 gross margin should grow significantly to approximately 15% in Q3 and approximately 20% in Q4, predominantly due to continued reduction in manufacturing costs and to some extent an improving mix. An average selling price will remain high for several quarters as we expect a richer mix in the initial wave of Model 3 deliveries to Europe and Asia Pacific countries. We believe future Model 3 cost savings will more than offset the normalization of the Model 3 average selling price in the second half of 2019, resulting in improving gross margins and stable gross profit for per vehicle. So yeah, this is a big deal. I mean, the Model 3 is the cash cow for Tesla. They've been saying it for some time now. This production number of getting to 5,000 for them is at the point where Tesla starts to become margin positive on the Model 3. This is something the shorts could just never get through their mind because they've never really done the calculations. Tesla, this concept of Tesla losing money on every vehicle is is true to some degree, because if you spend, say, $2 to $3 billion on a program and you make 5,000 cars, that price that you've paid to build all your capital expenditures has to be amortized over a certain amount of period, and it also has to be amortized on the vehicles. So those cars end up being, I mean, you're selling them for, call it $50,000, but if you look at the cost of what it's costing you to build those, it's built into the price of the car at first. Of course, it's astronomical. Of course, you're going to lose money on that, but that's not how production works. You have to ramp up the production to the point where you get enough production where the revenues now start to come in that exceed what the cost of everything calculated, total cost of building the vehicle, your tooling, and all that other stuff. So that's why this 5,000 number is critical for Tesla to start getting profitable. And as they ramp up to 10,000 cars sometime next year, that's when the money will really start rolling in. And of course, the profit margins will keep creeping up to this magical 30% that they keep saying. Thoughts?
So I want... Go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say, my favorite part was listening to them geek out about building the tent. And getting asked, is it a permanent structure? The answer wasn't yes or no. It was, it's here for now and it works really well. Sure. But listening to them speak about how they've learned in such a short amount of time how to make the car more efficiently, that the GA4 is incredibly efficient. And they reused a lot of the parts that they already had, so there wasn't a big CapEx spend. I just thought that was incredible. That what other company comes up with the tent and has a massive surge in production? It was just phenomenal to listen to them talk about it and get excited about solving the challenge.
I think the best comment that I heard on that part about the discussion about the tent was when JB popped in. JB doesn't talk a lot, but when he does, you better pay attention to what he says. And his salient point was like, I think you're being distracted by the tent. What really matters is what's going on inside. And I thought, man, he nailed it. I think that was a bit of a jab. It was a bit of a jab, of course, to the shorters who've been making a lot of noise about, I'm never buying a car that's built in a tent. Like, shut up already.
All the performance ones are coming from the tent.
Well, exactly.
I'm so thankful for the tent. It's giving me, I'm going to have the world's most epic license frame, and it's going to say, reserved in a tent, built in a tent. That's my story. They just gave it to me. It's beautiful.
I love it.
Just make it into a bumper sticker and put it in the back of your car.
My car was built in a tent. My other car was a reservation. No, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah. So I want to read an excerpt from the last paragraph of that same document that you can actually get. By the way, if you guys want to read these things, these are great reading material. You can go to ir.tesla.com.
That's where all of their stuff is. Yeah.
As you can see everything. It's open to the public. It's all good. So the paragraph starts like this. It took 15 years to execute on our initial goal to produce an affordable, long-range electric vehicle that can also be highly profitable. So imagine that for a second. It took 15 years in their phase, in their plan to get to this point. He goes on to say, in the second half of 2018, we expect for the first time in our history to become both sustainably profitable and cash flow positive. None of this would be possible without the incredible efforts of our employees and the support of our customers, suppliers, and investors. So ideally, Tesla's letting you know, like, it's taking a long, long time to get here. But we now know in a very short amount of time, we're going to turn that around and become a profitable company for the first time in their history. And the cars have not been on the road for 10 years yet.
No.
So it's amazing to see what this young startup fledgling company is actually able to do in a very short amount of time, despite the naysayers, the people who say you're not going to do it, the Tesla shorts we've talked about, all of those people. It's the investors, it's the customers, it's the people who have believed in Tesla and worked with them to get to this point. And to read that document and for everyone to sort of have the sigh of relief that, we finally made it. We strongly believe that come 2019, we're going to be profitable for the first time ever. And that's in large part by the people who have always been with Tesla the entire way. And for those of you that are listening now that are new to Tesla, that are waiting for your cars and you're patiently waiting for the standard model or anything else you're looking to do down the road, the pickup truck, the Model Y, whatever it is, you're here because you believe in what we're doing. We believe in the mission. And so for them to say, yeah, you know what, it's taken a long time, but we're damn close now, is a testament to everyone that's been involved.
Well, I think Elon has said it many times that getting into the car business is a really dumb move. It's so capital intensive I mean, I see it all the time. These people, they're harping about Tesla on every little thing, and it's this and that, and it's like, at the grand scheme of things, people lose sight. I mean, you can't see the forest from the trees sometimes. You have to understand the GMs and the Fords and all the other manufacturers. God, they've been at this for 100 years. Mm-hmm. They've had a lot of time to pay off this tooling and get their business orders, their business in line, and get their dealerships sorted out and the service thing sorted out. Tesla's been, 15 years. You got to give them a break a little bit. But if you look at what they've been able to achieve in the last 15 years, and 6 actually manufacturing their old cars, it's astounding. I mean, imagine what's going to happen in the next 5 or 6 years if they keep going at the growth that they are now. They're not even going to be recognizable. I mean, I hope they keep that. What's the word I'm looking for? That startup mentality and keep executing on that. How much they'll be able to maintain that if they keep growing. I mean, they're at 40,000 employees now. Let's say they double it in another 5 or 6 years. Hopefully they'll be able to turn a boat around if they can. I mean, look what happened to some companies. I mean, you get so big you can't turn the company around. But,
and I think a lot of people who are experts in those various fields, the various industries that they're contending with, even like with SpaceX, never before have we ever taken a stage 1 rocket and landed it back on Earth to use it again. And they've done this how many times now?
Oh, they make it look easy.
Right. Yeah. And so the science, the engineering, all the folks who are having a say in how that works out, until you do it for the first time, everyone says you can't do it. And so for Tesla to do what they're doing as an auto manufacturer, when all the other companies, to your point, have been around for over a century, like, you can't do it that way. That's not how you do it. Tesla's saying, we don't care what you're saying. We're going to do it this way. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, we're going to learn from it and try to become better. And ideally, the mission dictates why they're so aggressive. If Tesla's not aggressive, climate change and the effect that we're having on our planet is directly going to be affected by what we're doing. And to see solar roofing, to see the Powerwall, to see the cars, and to see everything they're doing to really kind of get this product line out there as fast as possible is entirely based on what the mission is saying we're going to do, which is to push sustainability as fast as possible. So, if you don't believe in it, that's totally fine. There are a lot of folks who will kindly ask you to get out of the way so they can get their car.
Disruptive companies, man. That's what it's all about.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay, so the last one. We got to talk about the big elephant in the room. Elon dropped the mother of all tweets, the Moab or Moat, whatever you want to call it this week. The Moat. Yeah. He says, I'm considering taking Tesla private, have secured funding. Holy mackerel. Boy, did the internet...
Dun, dun, dun!
Boy, did the internet blow up. Holy mackerel. So what do you guys think about this? Like, how are they going to finance this thing? Do you think it's a trial balloon? Like, I remember back in the day, I don't know how much you guys remember, but when Apple, for example, was on the down and outs, Larry Ellison, who's a good friend of Steve Jobs, who's also the CEO and the owner of majority shareholder, of course, with Oracle at the time, had floated a trial balloon back in the day saying, I think I might buy Apple. And boy, the stock just went nuts, of course, at that point. And of course, it never happened. But he actually called it a trial balloon at the time, just to gauge interest as to what was really going on. Do we believe we're seeing something like this? Is like Elon really serious about this? Like, what would going private do to investors? I mean, we understand the whole concept of, okay, if you go private, and they've clarified a little bit, okay, we'll do a private fund and you can stay in or you can sell or do whatever the case may be. Elon really wants investors to stay on board. But I understand some of his mentality, of course, because he's fed up with the shorts. He's fed up with the whole shorting situation. I get that. Shorting is a natural thing in an industry. There's nothing wrong inherently with shorting, except if you use it to manipulate the media to get to your ends of the means. I mean, we'll take a little aside here. Leading up to the second quarter financials, I've never seen so much negativity from the shorters on Tesla. It was a coordinated attack. We know that for a fact now. There have been several articles published on this situation. And since the second quarter financials have come out, it's like it died off. There's still a few out there, but it's not as noisy as it was. I've never seen anything like it. So I think Elon, in a lot of ways, just got really fed up with the whole shorting situation. He's made he's made a lot of hints over the last few years that running a public company really sucks. And I think he's even mentioned that going private would be something that they would probably entertain at some time. Of course, Tesla went public back in 2010 because they didn't have a choice. They needed money, they needed support, and largely that's how you bootstrap a company. If you need the money, you have to go public. The problem with it, of course, is now you're beholden to Wall Street and shareholders, and you got to pay dividends, and you got to keep growing, and so on and so forth. He also made some points too that it's largely how SpaceX is all set up. That's not a public company. I remember, I'm paraphrasing here, Elon said that it's hard to go public with a company when your total outlook is 30 years out. I mean, Wall Street doesn't get that. They want money today. They want money today, not 30 years from now, right? So
I think that was one of the points in his blog post was, you know, Wall Street's focused on each quarter and he's focused on years, like you just said. And the pressure that puts on Tesla to make bad short-term decisions to satisfy Wall Street is not what the company is all about for its mission and its purpose. And he did say down the road, if this were to come to fruition, if they move forward, it could become public again down the road, but it might be in their best interest now to be a privately held company.
Yeah, I agree. What was the other thing he said? Something about SpaceX. Well, I'm just going back to what I said before, is that it pretty much mirrors how his SpaceX is actually set up. That it's a long-term growth, and it doesn't work well. I mean, you can see. I mean, one of the pieces of evidence that I'll bring up is the fact that, and this is something that's bothered me, and I've said it a few times, that this push for production and deliveries always towards an end of a quarter, it's not sustainable. You can't keep doing that. It pushes the employees too hard. It pushes your production too hard. It makes Elon cranky. If he didn't have all that oversight of having to do these crazy numbers and these crazy feats, that maybe they'd be able to operate more at a leisurely, well, not a leisurely pace, but a pace that's actually more sustainable for them. And it would also probably help with some of the employee turnover, of course, right? They always seem to have a problem with employee turnover. I mean, every company has employee turnover, but when you push really hard in Silicon Valley, especially with a company that makes cars, it's not like making an iPhone, for crying out loud. There's a lot more parts in it, so.
No, we had a big discussion about this in my office this week.
Yeah,
and, everyone as soon as the news broke out, everyone's running in my office. What's happening? What do you think they're going to do? Blah blah blah. I was like, whoa,
slow down.
But yeah, exactly. And I think their statement that they released that afternoon, and what a day that was. I mean, they actually halted trading on the stock for an hour.
They did.
I mean, it was a mental day. So finally, the statement came out, and then trading resumed. And I thought the statement made a hell of a lot of sense. And what I read into it was really, to your point, Trev, is like, for all the reasons you just stated, but certainly for the well-being of the employees. Can you imagine being a Tesla employee right now, working day in and day out, under the tremendous pressure, the deadlines to execute these crazy goals just to make sure that the quarter gets pulled off, plus all the other stuff that you're trying to achieve on top of all that. And then you walk into the average coffee shop or you have dinner with some friends, whatever, and everyone's like, boy, are you sure you're going to have a job next week? I just read this article, whatever, in Wall Street Journal or something, or I saw a thing on CNBC. It must be relentless, like, all the FUD and the nonsense. Like, it's the last thing you need on top of everything else you're going to try to achieve, and like the legitimate stress and problems you have to overcome. And then in your spare time, all you hear is these negative stories about, how your company is upside down and it's a scam and whatever all else. It would make me insane. So yeah, no, if nothing else, if it just gets rid of all that, I think it's worth it. But for all the reasons you stated above and beyond, I think it's the move. The only question in my mind is, how are they going to accommodate the small investors, such as we are out here, into the picture? I mean, he's made a promise that he wants to try and bring everybody in. It's not clear to me exactly how that's going to work. But honestly, if it meant that I just basically had to sell out at 420 or whatever it winds up being, and it's going to be the big boys playing, I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. It would sadden me because I have a long-term interest in growing with them financially. But I, based on what I think they stand to gain from it, I'd be willing to give that up to ensure the success of the company and the mission.
Well,
I think that's more important.
He seems to be pretty clear in the fact that people that want to be invested in the company will be able to do so through some kind of other private fund, whatever. Which also brings up the question: is he said he secured the financing? Where's this money coming from?
That's the $70 billion
right,
question.
Because at the same time, we had this big hubbub about Saudis investing 5% in the company. I think even saw on Twitter some people were saying, "Oh, it's a possible hostile takeover." I mean, I don't follow it that close to find out what's going on, but does he really need to? I mean, look, I'm not a financial guy. Does he need to raise the company valuation, like the total amount of outstanding shares, the valuation, call it $70 billion, whatever 420 translates to? Is that the actual buyout price, or is it a fraction thereof? Like, how does this work? Does anybody know?
Well, honestly, I'm ignorant to the subject, but he owns 20% of the company. So does he need that $14 billion, or does he already you know what? I have no idea how it works. I've been trying to research this the last couple of days, to be honest.
Well, the other question I heard too is, of course, it has to go to a shareholder vote. Now, with Elon holding 20%, I mean, yeah, he can't. He may or may not vote for himself. What if he recuses himself? He did that for the Solar City acquisition. He recused himself from the vote. So, yeah. But I'm sure there's a lot of companies out there who have a long-term vision. It wouldn't surprise me something like Fidelity, who has a large stake in Tesla, and of course with SpaceX, they may see the future and may want a good piece of that, and willing to give them the money to go private. In a lot of ways, it may silence a lot of the shorters, because when you're not on the stock exchange anymore, the shenanigans basically stop. Now, publicly, they may say a bunch of stuff, but at least they can't manipulate the stock anymore, right?
Right.
I think it would totally kill it. I mean, there'd be no point in it anymore. It would just sound like sour grapes. It would be ridiculous. But I do believe that he would have to have a solid commitment for the financing, because the minute you make public statements like that, the SEC is going to come knocking, which they already have. Oh, and they're going to want to know, okay, are you're saying this? Do you really have the backers lined up? I cannot imagine that he would have gone public in such a quick and very visible way if he couldn't back up that claim.
I think some people may be taking exception to the fact that he said that before they stopped the trading. Right. I don't know how this whole thing works, but maybe they said. Yeah.
Oh, there was lots of debates on different platforms, but the gist of it that I got was, well, look, it's the CEO talking in a public space, stating very briefly but clearly what his intention is, and nobody seemed to think that was illegal. I saw a lot of shorts trying to make the claim that, like, oh yeah, no, that's in violation of regs. Again, I'm not an expert on it. I can't say.
Well, the shorts they'll pick it anything, of course, but
of course they will. They'll say he used the wrong font. I don't know. But anything. But no, I will have to see how it pans out. But the only thing I can gather from it is I would find it astonishing that he would make the claim if he actually didn't have the financial backing, at least lined up in theory on it.
I also think, and this is of interest to me personally, is just in that last few hours of the day where the announcement was out there, you had a number of folks who had this, like that very kind of like an aha moment of like all the news of the Model 3 performance and the road test, and all of a sudden this comes out there like, wait a second, that's actually not a bad idea. So, obviously it threw the market into a tiz.
Well, there were a lot of folks. It worked for Dell.
Yeah, look, it's not unfamiliar territory for other companies on the same thing. I think in this era of social media, and Elon's very public with his Twitter feed above it, but we know he doesn't like Facebook, so we know that's that story. But for him to at least kind of throw it out there, like, I don't think this came out of nowhere. I think this has been on his mind for a while.
Oh yeah, it's pretty obvious.
And it's to see things kind of moving quickly. And there were a lot of folks who were publicly stating after he had his tweet, like, I'm all for it. I'm an investor. I'm all for it. So it is going to come down to a vote at that point. And again, none of us are on here are experts in the financial market, especially in Wall Street. But it was at least modestly positive in those final few hours after he tweeted, where a lot of people said that's actually not a half bad idea. And and a lot of folks were publicly claiming their support for it. And if it were to work out that way, that's great. I do find some irony, though, that it's actually 420. Because, you know, California,
yeah,
420.
That, yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny. Purely coincidental. I'm not suggesting anything, but, you know.
Of course.
Just wait till October, come to Canada.
Yeah, in terms of this not being a sudden move, I also tend to believe a lot of people who say this was the famous short burn of the century that he proclaimed 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, somebody can make a case for that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Because I think it was 3 weeks to the day almost from when he said that, and we all thought, you know, the media association is, it's going to be the Q2 call, you know, and
was
you know,
really
that was
3
close
weeks?
enough. Yeah, I'm pretty sure somebody claimed this. I didn't go back and check the calendar on it, but it was in and about that.
You know what? That's piqued my interest now. I'm gonna have to go back because you're absolutely right. If it is 3 weeks, because he did say 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Then this is maybe something that he was
May 4th is when he tweeted it.
May 4th?
May 4th, 2018.
Short burn of the century?
Oh, and short burn of the century coming soon. Flamethrower should arrive just in time.
Okay, but after
there
that,
was another one,
no, he said another one. He says it in about like another short burn, something in about 3 weeks.
Maybe, but I mean, but his initial statement of that was 9:02 a.m. on May 4th.
Okay, well.
Oh yes, I remember that one clearly because I bought in a whack more stock at that point, and there was no burn.
There was no
unfortunately. Burn. I mean, in the end,
well, you're okay now.
Well, oh, absolutely, no complaints. But I was kind of like, dude, where's the burn? I'm waiting.
Yeah. Don't let it go in order because that's affecting my Model 3 purchase, right?
Yes, that's very much. Yeah, all my deposit money.
Oh boy, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody who would have a problem with it if they're in for the long term. Like if they believe in the mission and they're long on Tesla, I don't think they would really have any problem with this, especially if you can get in on the private fund. There may be some ramifications for some people that have some of the stock in say, like in Canada, we have something called RSPs, registered retirement savings, which I believe is the same thing as a 401k in the U.S. I don't know.
Basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think you can't have, I think they have to be public or something. I don't know. I heard somebody say something about...
Again, disclaimer, we are not financial experts.
No, exactly. But I was reading somebody online was saying something that causes problems for people that have Tesla stock in an RSP, that they would have to divest themselves because it conflict or it doesn't work that way. It has to be private. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. So these are all things that have to be sorted out at the end of the day, I think. Yeah, and I've tweeted out. I don't have a problem. If it fulfills the mission, then hey, whatever it takes, man. I'll transfer. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, and there were some other people that said, some other companies. Oh, I think, who was it? Somebody said, it was Bonnie. Bonnie Norman had tweeted out, and she said, was it Bonnie?
I think it was Bonnie.
Was it Bonnie? She said
something. If you're going where I think you're going, I think it was her.
Yeah, how she had mentioned joining a company, and they went private from public, and it caused lots of consternation, and ultimately shut the company down. But on the flip side, it can also work in their favor because Dell used to be public, and now they're private again. And I don't think Apple, for example, would have any problem buying all their stock back and going private. I'm sure they would love to do that. Although they're paying dividends now, they're a profit money-making machine. There's no reason for them to go private if they had to. Who knows? But any last thoughts? This is going on an hour and 12 minutes now, so pretty long. Any closing thoughts on this?
Well, I just think in general, and we've certainly suggested a number of different points throughout the conversation, but I think at the end of the day, and Trevor, I liked what you said in the beginning of it, which is that it's going to bring peace of mind for the employees of the company, so that they don't have to really listen to all of that ambient noise that's happening all around them. They can just come into work, do their work, have fun doing it, and go home knowing they're making a difference without all of that background sound just sort of causing static and headaches and everything else. So that to me is really, at the end of the day, I think the greater part of all this, which is the company is now believing that they're viable on their own without the need for all this influx of cash from other areas, and saying, listen, we're gonna kind of shutter those doors for a while. If we need to, we can always reopen it. We're not gonna throw away the key, but we think we can get by without it. Thanks for getting us here, and we'll see you again.
Well, they also said in the letter, too, that there was no reason that they couldn't do another offering later on in the future. Once they're stable, money's coming in, everything is good, production's set up, they've got maybe half a dozen cars, 12 cars under their belt, maybe they could go public again when there's a little less risk. I mean, being the most shorted stock on Wall Street cannot be a healthy thing. So on that note, maybe we should just call it a night. Eric, where can people find you on the internet if they want to chit-chat with you?
If you guys want to find me on Twitter, my handle is ECFix. That is ECFIX. I may change it down the road, but for right now, that's where you can find me on Twitter.
Excellent. How about you, Michael? Where can people find you, Mr. Tesla-tunity?
You can find me at Tesla-tunity on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and I added Instagram as well. Might as well take some pictures and share them. So I hope to see you guys out there. And on the forum, of course, SOFLA Model 3.
Excellent. And last but not least, our good friend Ian Pavelko. Where can people chit-chat with you?
Well, on Twitter, certainly. You can find me at Ian Pavelko. And you can find me on the Model 3 Owners Club forum under the handle Mad Hungarian.
Excellent. What about your T-shirts? I like your color teal that you've got.
Oh, yeah, I'm wearing one today. Good point here. Thank you. Yeah, we've got, of course, the T-shirt program. That's through Teespring. You can go to Teespring, teespring.com, and just look up Mad Hungarian or Evolveware, and you'll find my line of Tesla-themed shirts. And we've just added mugs to the program. So if you'd like a Model 3 mug with that same motif of the caveman evolving into the electric car, you can get that now. And there's a few more things. I've actually got a new design that's going to launch very soon to celebrate achieving true mass production numbers. So keep your eye out. That's coming out in another week or two.
Well, that's excellent. Well, I'll put a link to his T-shirt thing in the video description if you want to check it out. Well, with that, we'll call it a night. You can follow me. My handle on Twitter is at Model3Owners. Don't forget to check out the forum at Model3OwnersClub.com. I want to say a big thank you to all the Patreon supporters out there. They're the people that make this whole thing happen. So if you're interested and like the show and like to maybe consider supporting us, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/Model3OwnersClub. Thanks for watching and listening anywhere out in the world, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching, folks. See you later.